This is Product by Design, a podcast by Prodigy, where we explore technology, artificial intelligence, user experience, product management, and the philosophy of building products and companies. All right, welcome to another episode of Product by Design. I am Kyle, and this week we have another awesome guest with us, Felix Lundquist. Felix, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's so fun to be here. And perfect pronunciation there, by the way.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to have you and excited to talk about a number of things, but let me do a really brief intro and then you can tell us a little bit more about yourself. Felix is an art director from Sweden, currently working in San Francisco. So obviously a lot more to that, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
I come from a background in skiing. We were always, and as people who have dabbled in or skied quite a bit, in order to get sponsors, you have to film your content and create like reels and send it to sponsors. And most of these sponsors don't even pay anyone any money, but it's more like you can get some free gear. So I started doing that quite a bit ever since I was a young kid. We went to the ski parks and we did some tricks and we edited them and sent them in. And then I've always had a very, very huge interest in psychology. So I started right after high school. I started studying at a university in Sweden. I started studying psychology. Absolutely love the sociology aspect of it, where like how people think, what drives humans, what makes us attracted to certain products, what makes us like empathize with different brands or people, and why. And dropped out after a year there because I felt like it was too much of a clinical approach. And then I learned from a friend that there was a possibility to combine the creative output of really appreciating like video format and which I took from skiing, of filming, and the creative visual aspect with psychology, and which is basically approaching it in the marketing industry and the advertising industry. So I started studying art direction at Berg School of Communication in Sweden, and then I transferred to the Academy of Art in San Francisco, where and then I started studying at Academy of Art, and I got really, really hooked on art direction and kind of like how to establish a brand tone of voice in a visual way. And with my background in film and also taking a bunch of film class on the side, this is something that really kind of propelled me in the direction of pursuing a career as an art director. And then I started as an intern at Apple for about 6 months mid-pandemic. So it was really, really thrown into the deep end with trying to figure out, along with all the coworkers, how we were gonna work around the reality of being remote, and that was such a weird experience. And then I jumped to Cutwater, pitched a ton of clients, worked on a lot of global brands, and then Havas, and then Critical Mass, and then a few others in between. So it was some freelancing, quite a bit of full time. Was so hungry to learn and so hungry to meet a lot of people in the industry and work on the best campaigns that I could possibly be an asset to. So yeah, no, I think with the pandemic too, I managed to have be very, very hungry for opportunities, which kind of also made me gave me a lot of possibilities, because a lot of companies were looking for new ways in, but didn't really know how to approach it either. So it was, yeah. So that's kind of the rundown of where I've been. I'm now an art director at Critical Mass, working on the second largest media spender in the world. Critic or For AT&T as a client, AT&T spends around $400 million a year on advertising. So it's a lot of money, but uh, so it's just like a lot of very, very fast paced, a lot of work coming in, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Oh, I'm excited to jump into a couple of those areas that you touched on.
Yeah,
But before we do, you mentioned skiing being a big part of what you did and potentially what you do. Do you still do a lot of skiing? And if so, where?
I do. It's more now. I was aspiring to be a competitive professional skier for a while, which led me to live in Switzerland and Canada and travel to Japan and do a lot of traveling for skiing. And then I kind of figured that competing and skiing requires such a huge commitment and a sacrifice in lifestyle in a lot of ways. And during the summertime, it's a pretty odd industry. But then now it's more of a way for me to detach from the like creative aspect by engaging in something physically and and kind of replenishing those creative fluids, you know. So I ski. I went to Mount Shasta 3 weeks ago and skied down Mount Shasta, and then it's more of like an excursion in nature where you hike up something or tour something, and then you ski down and you hang out with your best friends. You push each other physically to levels that you're not used to in the regular work week, which is so fun. So that's kind of where I'm skiing at most now. And then Tahoe, obviously, too, which is Lake Tahoe is 3 hours away from San Francisco, which is where I live. And it's got very, very famous ski resorts that are very, very nice.
Very nice. Yeah. And it's crazy you mentioning skiing. I mean, we're recording this in the summertime, and so being able to ski just a few weeks ago, I know that we had a number of resorts here in Utah that were open just up until well into what we'd consider the summer normally, which has been, the ski season has been superb this year.
Insane.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah. I think like Mammoth hit like 500 inches of snow or something during the season. So there's still snow there.
Yep.
And it's kind of crazy because I was just also this weekend in Mount Lassen, or in Lassen National Park, which is 4 hours north of here. And there's still snow on the 8,000 feet peaks, which is insane to see how much snow there actually is still in July, you know?
Yeah, we were actually just up in Jackson Hole ski resort and went to the top of the mountain there. More to like do some hiking around and see and everything, but there was still enough snow that you couldn't do a lot of summertime hiking because there had just been so much. So crazy, but in a really, really good way. I hope that every snow season and ski season continues to be like that.
Me too.
Awesome. Well, I want to dive in a little bit more to a number of the things that you said in kind of your journey and some of the things that you're working on. You mentioned, now you're working really as an art director, doing a lot of these creative things and marketing and advertising. I'm interested in a little bit more about that. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the things that you work on as an art director and some of the things that you're kind of seeing with a lot of the clients that you're working with as far as approaches to marketing and advertising right now?
Yeah. So just also to clarify, I work mostly with social campaigns. I've done broadcast as well, which is TV. Social is by far the most the strongest metric in terms of reach, in terms of interaction with the audience. So it's been something that's been intriguing to me, and it's also like pushing really what the future of the industry looks like. And so I've worked with Vitamin Water. I worked with Coca-Cola. I worked with SeaWorld. I worked with Smart Water. So and Spotify. So and all of these brands have very different approaches to marketing, and generally the edgier brands have an approach that's much more where they're trying to communicate like with a more personal message to the audience. Whereas, so it's like, if you think of it in terms of funnels, in terms of high and low funnels, which is basically trying to either attract completely new customers who've never heard of the brand, or try to, which is high funnel in this regard, or low funnel, which is customers who all know the brand, have all heard of it. A few of those brands like SeaWorld, for example, they're really trying to reel in customers by highlighting crazy deals. And it's not as much about like building a brand, but it's more about like, how can we promote these deals in a visually compelling way and with a campaign. And while on the other hand, like Vitamin Water, which is completely, they're crazy. Like, it's so fun to work with them because they're like, yeah, we want to bring in some influencer who's going to have 6 different personalities, and we're going to attach each of his personalities to one of our flavors. And they're doing like really, really social pushing work. That's and it's literally just, they're selling waters, right? Like flavored waters. So it's a lot more about building the value of a brand rather than pushing out deals. So those are kind of the two like in terms of like funnels that and territories that I've been working with. And I find the most interesting thing to work with is for sure brands that are trying to establish a brand tone and try to invoke new like connotations to their audience, and try to be relevant to contemporary culture, and try to approach like new creative ways of engaging with their audience. So that's kind of like what I've, and AT&T for sure is also, and it's kind of like the bigger the companies get, the more layers and touch points are involved. So it becomes harder to push the brand into a direction where you create very, very personal campaigns. But AT&T is a kind of funny structure where there's a lot of where we have a very, very close working relationship with the person who's responsible for all AT&T's work, everything from broadcast, TV to any kind of social. So working closely with him and not having as many layers of communication allows us to kind of push the brand in some regards with really fun campaigns. And the truth is, like, the deal campaigns also generate money for the company, so they also want some of those. But right now I'm working on we just worked on the March Madness campaign for AT&T. Where we were in LA shooting for 10 days and did 3 spots for AT&T. So it's kind of like it's right now we're kind of dabbling in everything, and we're working very, very closely with the AT&T team to make sure that we're tapping into both areas of deals and trying to build a better brand relationship with our customers.
Right. It's interesting. And I want to kind of touch on a couple points that you made, but as you're going through a lot of this work and, either working with, brands to kind of like you were saying, to build that brand awareness, or, to create those additional opportunities, what makes a good advertising or a good campaign, or kind of like you were saying, a more personalized approach? Like, what does good look like as you're doing some of this advertising and marketing?
Yeah. I think I think overall, like, good advertising, good campaigns, like, can be broken into four different factors. And it's number one is being like clear communication. It's literally the most important thing of them all, almost, to try to be break your idea down to be as simple as possible. So it resonates with the audience. Everything is so short attention span these days. So just like trying to peel those layers down and make it as simple and as digestible as possible, especially if you're pushing it out through social, because the attention span in the past like 6 years have gone down from like 8 seconds to like 1 second or something, at least according to our engagement on social. And also number two is making sure that it's relevant to the audience. So the campaign or the advertising has to be relevant to the audience you're trying to get. The wider the demographic you're trying to reach, the harder it's going to be to establish relevance. But if you're trying to communicate to a very, very targeted demographic, aging men in the ages of 20 to 23 who appreciate fly fishing or something, it's going to be a much narrower demographic that you really, really can hit hard on. So trying to understand them and trying to tap into their emotions, trying to know their habits, trying to know which other brands they interact with, if there's possibility for a collab or something. Three is approaching it creatively and innovation, and it's just like, can we push it through a unique medium? Can we do something they've never seen before? Can we do a pop-up store in this location where the majority of these people engage with on a daily basis? Or maybe we find a platform where this demographic we're trying to hit is using. Maybe it's Be Real, and maybe we're doing the first brand partnership with Be Real in a unique way. And the fourth thing is something that I take with me from psychology, obviously, which is, I think there's always going to have to be an element of emotional appeal to it. And by that, I mean that it's evoking some sort of feeling that resonates with the audience or the individual, trying to connect with them on an emotional level. It creates a stronger bond. It makes them feel seen and heard. It gives the advertising and the campaign a personality. It drives brand loyalty and fosters desired actions as a consequence of that. So yeah, those four bullets are kind of what I look for when I'm judging work, when I'm interacting with work, and also when I'm trying to create work, to make sure that we're hitting those four buckets.
No, that's great. And I'm interested, how do you apply that to social specifically, or what are some of the differences you see between social and some of the other potential channels that either make it unique or more interesting or different in some way?
I think like the main difference between social and TV, out of home, anything related to that, is that our devices that we call phones are so data and algorithm driven. So whenever you interact on social media, any kind of ad that you see is much more personalized, and it's factored in hundreds of variables that relate to why you're actually seeing what you're seeing. The key difference to a functional social campaign is just like personalization and making sure that the audience can see themselves in the ad, making sure that it's relevant to them. And all those earlier four bullets are even more important in a social ad. But I think it's almost even more important to be to emphasize them even more. Like, can we be clear? Can we make this idea? Can we remove one sentence from this idea to make it even more clear and straightforward? And seeing trends today in social media too, it's all about contrast and hooks, and if like the probability of them, the viewer and consumer seeing the full ad, if they've seen like the first 2 seconds, is like dramatically increased. Like they're incredibly more likely to see the rest of the ad if they've seen the first 2 seconds. So yeah, it's that's kind of the key difference that we're looking for in social work.
Oh, that's great. I'm interested too. How are you approaching some of the different social channels? Obviously, we there's a lot of change that's continually happening. Where are some of the most important ones, and what does the future look like in social?
The most, like, they're just like kind of competing with each other, and YouTube Shorts is crazy right now. They're blowing up, and their reach is insane. YouTube Shorts has generated so much, such a wide audience and such a high interaction rate, that I think that's kind of where we're pushing into the close future. But the thing about YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram Reels, and I'm sure to all people listening to who are interacting with social media on a daily basis, is that all these platforms have cross-platform functionality. So the truth is, they all, like any kind of successful influencer. Let's talk about the world's most successful influencer, probably, which is, apart from just followers with very high interactions, probably Mr. Beast, who is a YouTube personality, who has up combined about 1 billion followers on his YouTube. And even he's talking about the most potent kind of form of approaching social media is public, like posting cross platform, keeping the message clear and short, making those reels or TikToks or whatever you want to refer them to as straight to the point and with as much contrast as possible. But there's obviously key differences between the platforms. But if we're talking reach and we're talking video format, those are the ways in, kind of to try to approach. But then Instagram has statics too. TikTok launched statics pretty recently. But yeah, the most compelling kind of format is still brand ambassadors talking in a video about the product, endorsing it. So yeah, I would say that there are key differences, but at the same time, everyone and every single brand now is trying to establish content that approaches more of the similarities and the possibility of publishing and posting cross-platform.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I'm interested in that. How, as you've worked with a number of brands, like how have you approached that with different brands? Because I think of some of these larger multinational and media companies as being maybe a little bit slower to embrace some of the new styles and new platforms and new ways of reaching customers, whereas other brands may be much more nimble and much more willing to do something a little bit more outside of what you would normally do. Has that been the case, or have you seen that most companies are open to really reaching people in a way that makes sense, depending on the platform and depending on the style? Or is there some work to do with more legacy type companies that have to kind of bring them along? What has been your experience?
Oh, there's so much truth in that. It's incredibly hard with conglomerates and legacy companies to pivot into TikTok and any kind of social media, and they just, I think truth is, in trying to empathize with them, there's so much money on the line, and if things are moving in a slightly upward trajectory, they don't see it as a reason to change anything. So and they don't see the potential of social media because the brands have been functioning without social media. But I think, to be completely honest, there's a saying called the Red Queen hypothesis, which is rooted in kind of like a Darwinistic approach, where it's like, if you don't change, you're eventually gonna like be obsolete, basically. And it's about constant progression. Even if you're the best in your field, you have to keep pushing. And I think we're going to see a lot of the bigger brands falling off with the competitors becoming super relevant on social media. So for me, like when I'm working with these giant corporations such as SeaWorld, where there's levels and levels and levels of approval that have no idea what TikTok is, it's more about showing than it is about creating. So it's like, okay, we have this idea. We basically, before production and before getting it greenlit on from their end, we basically have to do it first and argue why this is going to be super successful. And we have to have so many references, and we have to have so many layers of background checks that align with our idea. And if there's an idea that's been successful in the past that's similar to what we're going for, it's going to be much easier. While on the other hand, newer companies such as Vitamin Water, it's much easier to approach them with an idea where we're pushing the brand, where we're kind of like, oh, we're in uncharted territory here, and this feels kind of dangerous. And could this be controversial? Could this be incredibly successful? And high risk, high reward, right? So I think generally those brands are more less or more risk takers and reap the rewards from taking those risks, and they're more in tune with the outlook on social media and how it works. So it's much easier to convince them on how we should approach this new idea. And then it's more about creating and being very, very creative and trying to be unique and innovative, rather than trying to focus on like, how can we make this compelling to the clients, instead of how can we make this compelling to the audience, which is such an interesting thing, but that is the reality, to be honest.
Yeah, you've touched on a really interesting point, because I think it's easy to get, and I'm just thinking about videos and on TikTok specifically that are very much like advertisements, and you can kind of see that, and it kind of looks to me like it was, something that a brand or a company would be very happy with, because it's very traditional, as opposed to some of the much more successful campaigns or marketing, which are not necessarily about the brand, but about the people they're trying to reach, and much more, focusing on who are the customers, who are the users, who are the people who care about this. And, let's not make a commercial for us. Let's make a campaign for them in a way that they will engage with and actually enjoy. I'm interested. Have you seen any that stand out in your mind as like, this was a really, really good approach that this company or the organization or brand took as far as recent marketing or campaigns go?
Innovative or just like, or on social, or just like in general campaigns?
Particularly on social, but yeah, anything innovative, or like, this was a really good way of doing it that kind of stands out in your mind.
I just think that it's like the landscape that we live in, the contrasty and weird things win. And I'm not sure if you've seen it, but like one of the most viewed TikToks in the world in like 2021 was a guy riding with an ocean splash cranberry juice on a skateboard, which generated that company revenue beyond anyone's wildest dreams, and they had no understanding of it. And we have the Taco Bell, or not the Taco Bell, but the Chipotle burrito, where someone is wrapped up in a burrito, and it became a trend, and then everyone started doing it. So I'm always super excited on, or very, very intrigued on how those kind of like brand launches start and how they take shape, and then how they become a social phenomenon where it's just like uh, shared and taken on as challenges. And I think one thing that I'm looking at a lot for inspiration is artists and labels that are pushing out music, because they're really damn good at making shareable content that will be used and where people can actually take part in the movement with but I think successful that I think have been really, really cool is yeah, I will have to get back to, but I think the truth is like the brands that have created the most compelling. I mean, I guess we did a pretty successful launch of the vitamin water Nourish Every You, where we created different filters and a challenge where people through Lil Nas X, which we launched through him, where people could show how they became different personalities with a filter, and how do you embody a different personality. Is it the way you walk? Is it the way you talk? Is it the way um, you dress? And also tying that up to the brand, because all of our different flavors had different personalities. So you can choose which flavor you think is your favorite and which one you think resonates with you. And so, not to just reference my own work, but I think it's there's a ton out there, and literally a lot of the content that we engage with is rooted in brands creating challenges and artists creating challenges with labels. Olivia Rodrigo released a new single a couple of days back, and it's gone super viral with her creating an idea that's really simple, a song, a transition, and use it, like use the song, use the transition, make it your own, make it own the brand kind of. So the brand is in the almost in the hands of the customers, and everyone feels resonated to the brand, which also, or everyone feels seen and heard by the brand because they feel like they're part of the campaign. And it's a win-win for the people interacting with it, and the people interact, or the brand itself. Um, yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah,
But I will think in the background of some other super successful campaigns.
yeah, you brought up some interesting ones, and I think that those again kind of go to the point of it's not necessarily about like the brand or company just simply advertising, but it's about who the people are who are going to be watching it, and what do they care about, and how will they engage with it, and
Yeah,
in ways that sometimes you can't even foresee, which is super interesting. Like some of just the super viral things that have happened that uh, I don't know. I don't know that we'd necessarily expect. I think if you could expect it, you'd probably nobody would do anything but make viral
yep,
content. But how some of those, it's not just the standard commercial type videos that we saw years and years ago. It's much more engaging now.
exactly.
Yeah, and I'm interested. You talked about some of the interest in psychology that you had, and I'm interested how does that play into the way that we either engage with or see advertising and marketing, and how do you think about that as you're approaching some of these campaigns and different things that you're putting together?
The psychology aspect, or
Yeah,
I think to answer it in a very, very complex question in a short format, I think it's all about empathy, and the it's about being able to empathize with your audience. And as we mentioned earlier, everything is data driven. Everything is trying to create more personalized content that's easy for the viewers to pick up. And you can break it down into very, very specific aspects of psychology that almost taps into the strategic approach to why you're selecting certain things. But everything, like everything from the color palette to how you edit the video, the pacing, the cuts, the way that you frame is deeply rooted in psychology. And I think that's something that we keep in mind when it comes to the production, but also like from the start, even to make sure that there is something that resonates with the viewer of this. And if I'm trying to hit a demographic that's within my age, I always try to question myself, like, would I actually care about this? Would I actually share this? And in some regards, it's about making like you win some, you lose some. In some scenarios, it's about satisfying the client and making sure that they're happy. And in other regards, it's you have a lot to push for, and you see the potential in an idea. And psychology kind of creates a stronger fundament, is what I would say as well, where it's where you build it from a simple foundation and you start adding things that are relevant to the demographic you're trying to reach. And also, like, there's not like a lot of my work is for sure conceptual and creating new ideas, visually establishing them, making sure that they are up to my expectations. But it's also in research, and it's like we're like if I'm trying to compete in a field where literally even being under like being at the age of 28, where I sometimes feel like I'm obsolete in terms of how social media is changing so fast, and I'm interacting with all these products on a daily basis. It just moves very fast. So research is of the essence, making sure you're trying to understand these platforms, trying to understand the psychology behind these platforms, and reading, learning, constantly evolving. And that's kind of where the psychology comes in, to be honest, to try to empathize.
Yeah, I think that's an amazingly good point for, not just for this, but for so many things. And I think you've hit on a number of just such critical things. I think that's great. Now, as you look at your career, what, I guess two things. Is there anything that, as you got into this, you look back and wish you knew earlier in your career? And what advice would you give to anybody who is looking to maybe start down this road and start into or level up in a career like this?
I think something that I was kind of stressing about was I was so hungry to learn and so hungry to be part of everything. But I think it's important to really trust the process, and the work that you put into something, you're going to get rewarded with eventually. And really relying on that, trusting the delayed gratification, where it's like you put in the work, you're not going to get the results immediately, but you're not going to get promoted on day 2. Like that's the reality. And I think that's something that I was a little bit too stressed about. I think just like, embracing continuous learning. I think for me also really practicing effective and clear communication, because 9 times out of 10, the ideas live because you're conveying them clearly and efficiently to the client. And I've seen creative directors that sell fish to water, or water to fish. It's just like amazing how verbal they are and how good they are with their communication. And for me, that was me being hungry in meetings where I was like, hey, can I get one word in on this presentation? Can I just set up this idea to just practice on my verbal skills? And then after the meeting, can you give me feedback on what I did wrong and what I did right? Should I have lingered a little bit longer on this? Should I have more of a pause for an effect between these two. And I think that first of all shows that you're hungry, and also it shows that you're really trying to learn, and it also makes you much better at presenting, which is such a huge part of my day. And especially me being a Swedish, having Swedish as my maternal language, it's so important to entertain, because the longer the longer time between presentations, the more insecure you get, and the more you get caught up in your words, and the less clear and effective you kind of are.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that makes perfect sense. I love a couple of the points that you made. I think that's great. Well, Felix, this has been a really, really great conversation. I feel like we could keep it going for a while longer based on a number of the things that we've talked about. Is there, as we kind of wrap this up, I have a couple last questions for you, but
yeah.
Where could people find out more about you, about the work you're doing, about anything like that?
I mean, there's I'm pretty engaged in one club. I've done some articles there, and Instagram. Feel free to follow me, but it's more of a personal platform for me. But LinkedIn, happy to connect as well. And please send me an email if there's anything I can help you with. I really, really try to be as engaged in the up and coming creative community as possible. And I can share my mail with Kyle later, and then you guys can take it from there if anyone wants to reach out.
Yeah, we'll put all those links in the show notes, so you can check out some of Felix's work and reach out to him. Awesome. Well, we like to usually wrap up with a couple of just more general questions around, and this can be around anything. But if you've read or watched or listened to anything recently that you found particularly interesting, and doesn't have to be professional related, but it can be.
I always think that Black Mirror is really fun, because it kind of questions a lot of things in contemporary culture, and they can be applied to marketing campaigns too, to be honest, like some of those ideas that come through there. So the new season, the new episodes, really, really thought-provoking, really, really interesting. I really like those. Huge fan of Derek Chanfrance. Just wrapped up his new series a couple of months ago. I Know This Much Is True. Amazing cinematography, amazing visual treatments. And in terms of books, I think one of my favorites of all time is called This Is Not My Memoir by Andre Gregory, which is about this weird theater director who lives in New York, who has such an innovative approach to theater, which I think I try to live by. And he values the things in his life that really relate to creativity, which I really, really admire. And he doesn't take himself too seriously, but he's still a professional in a lot of ways. So I can recommend that book too. And not a lot of people have heard about it either. So.
No, that's great. Yeah, I'll have to check out that book and then those shows as well. I haven't watched either of them. I haven't watched the new season of Black Mirror or the other one, so I'll have to put that on the list.
You have to watch them. They're so good.
Yeah, it's always good. All right. And then lastly, are there any products that you have been using and enjoying or not enjoying? You can give a shout out either way, either digital products or physical products or anything like that.
Let's start on a rant. Let's see where we can. I'm kidding. I think PowerPoint is terrible. We just converted to PowerPoint, and being an art director or any kind of designer in PowerPoint is a very, very tough product to work with. So there's a lot of constructive criticism to provide the team at PowerPoint. I think Spotify is continuously killing it in terms of product. I think they like everything that they launch really, really resonates with their audience, and it's the majority of the time it's literally back end work that people don't notice, but their algorithms are killing it, and their product design too is amazing. So super happy with Spotify, and always curious to hear more. So if you work at Spotify, hit me up, and I would love to hear more about it. It's so interesting.
Awesome. Yeah, those are great call outs, and I definitely agree.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Felix, this has been a great conversation. Appreciate all of your insight and everything that we've been able to talk about. And really enjoyed, talking about a number of different subjects with you.
Thank you so much. And this was a pleasure. So much fun. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thank you everyone for listening. Thanks again for listening. If you like the show, be sure to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can follow the show on TikTok at prodigy.co and on Twitter at prodigyco. You can also follow me on both of those platforms at Kyle Larry Evans. If you want more product conversation, check out my newsletter Prodigy at prodigy.co. You can also follow me on Medium at Kyle Larry Evans, or check out my Medium publication, Prodigy. Of course, you can check out all these links in the show notes.